They say every kingdom has its ghosts. But what happens when a kingdom is made of them? A realm built from spectral subjects and broken memories, ruled by the last of a line of phantom royalty. She is the final heir, the keeper of a throne of echoes, and for centuries, her lonely existence has been the only constant in this land of shadows. But now, something's changed. A living man has stumbled into her domain, and she has to decide, is he a threat to her eternal reign, or the key to finally breaking its curse? For more centuries than anyone could count, Princess Alara was the sole warden of Silengard, the Shadow Kingdom. She wasn't living, but she wasn't truly dead either. She was an anchor, a fixed point in a silent, spectral sea. Her kingdom was a masterpiece of sorrow, its towers like skeletal fingers clawing at a sky of perpetual twilight. Sunlight never touched this place. It couldn't get past the shimmering, invisible barrier that separated her home from the world of the living, a world she only knew from the fractured memories of her own people. And her people were ghosts, but not the terrifying kind you hear about in campfire tales. No, they were echoes, trapped in the amber of their single, final moment. In the grand ballroom, phantom nobles still waltzed to a silent orchestra, their jeweled gowns passing right through one another like smoke. In the bailey, guardsmen stood at their posts, their spectral eyes fixed on a horizon no living enemy would ever cross. They were memories, just fraying and thinning a little more with each century that passed. Alara would walk among them, a more solid shade in a world of whispers. She was their queen, but she couldn't speak to them. She could only watch as they replayed their final day, completely unaware of their fate and totally unaware of her lonely vigil. Her life was a quiet loop. She'd trace patterns in the dust on the great hall's floor, a tapestry woven from forgotten years. She'd sit on her throne of obsidian and sorrow, the crown of echoes feeling impossibly heavy on her spectral brow, and pretend to hold court. She'd listen as phantom petitioners pleaded their long-dead cases, their mouths moving without a sound. This kingdom, with its broken memories and silent people, was her charge, her prison, her entire world. The curse that held them all was her birthright. And then he arrived. It happened without any warning, a tremor in the stillness, a sound that wasn't a memory, a light that wasn't the pale, cold glow of phantom energy. A man, breathing and bleeding, stumbled through the veil of the kingdom's border, a flickering torch held high in his hand. That light, so warm and alive, sent the ghosts scattering like startled moths. It was the first real light to touch the stones of Silengard in 1,000 years, and to Alara, it felt like a physical blow. He collapsed just inside the gate, a living, breathing sacrilege in her kingdom of the dead. For the first time in her long, long existence, Alara felt something other than sorrow. She felt fear. She drifted towards the intruder, her form much more solid than the dissipating ghosts around her. The man, Liam, was an explorer, an academic obsessed with the legend of a kingdom that vanished overnight. He'd spent years deciphering crumbling maps and half-forgotten folklore, all just to find the myth of Silengard. Now, with a gash on his forehead and his clothes torn, he'd found it. As he stirred, his eyes widened. He was looking right at her. She wasn't a wisp or a wraith, but a figure of pale, luminous substance, regal, ancient. He'd expected a monster. He did not expect a queen. "You don't belong here." Ilara's voice sounded like the chime of cracked crystal. It had been centuries since she'd last used it, and the sound startled even her. Liam, instead of running, just stared. "It's real," he breathed, his words turning to a puff of white mist in the cold air. "The legends are true." He tried to get up, wincing as he put weight on an injured leg. "I'm Liam, a historian. I didn't mean any harm. The barrier, it tore at me when I came through." Ilara's suspicion fought with a desperate, unfamiliar curiosity. He was a threat, a disruption. His living energy was a wrong note in the silent symphony of her world. And yet, he looked at her crumbling kingdom not with fear, but with reverence. "This is a realm of the dead," she said, her voice a little stronger this time. "A place of final rest. Your presence here is a desecration." "A final rest?" Liam challenged, gesturing to the ghostly figures that were starting to reform at the edges of his torchlight. "They aren't resting, Your Highness. They're trapped, just like you." His words hit a truth she had ignored for far too long. Over the next few days, an uneasy truce formed between them. Liam, with his endless curiosity and his knowledge of the world outside, started to piece together the history of the curse, a curse Ilara had only ever known as a fact of her existence. He studied the crumbling frescoes in the royal chapel and the faded script in the library's spectral tomes, books whose pages she could never turn. He discovered the curse wasn't an enemy's attack at all. It was a desperate act of preservation. Ilara's ancestor, the last living king, had cast a massive spell to save his people from something called the Ashen Plague, a magical pestilence that consumed all life. The spell was supposed to place them in a timeless stasis until the plague passed, but something went horribly wrong. It fractured, turning the kingdom into a spectral echo and tethering the royal line to it to act as its warden. The kingdom wasn't just frozen, it was decaying. The broken memories were the spell itself unraveling, the ghosts slowly fading into nothing. "The curse isn't a lock," Liam explained one evening, standing before a vast celestial map carved into the observatory floor. "It's a failing dam, and when it breaks, your people won't just pass on. They'll be obliterated, erased, as if they never existed." The real threat wasn't Liam, it was time. As he spoke, a tremor ran through the castle, stronger than any before. A ghostly courtier in the hall below flickered violently, and then just vanished. Her loop of memory finally broken. The nothingness was coming for them. Liam was convinced the source of the spell, its heart, was in the catacombs beneath the castle. He recognized symbols from his research that described a heartstone, a magical focus that powered the whole thing. He argued that if they could find it, he might be able to use what he knew about ancient magic to stabilize it. But Ilara knew the catacombs were the most dangerous part of her kingdom. It was where the memories were most broken, where the oldest, most confused spirits dwelled, and where the decaying magic was at its most hostile. To go there was to risk being torn apart by the very thing holding her world together.
The journey down into the catacombs was like a journey through madness. Here, the memories weren't peaceful loops, they were chaotic, violent fragments. Spectral soldiers fought phantom battles, their silent screams echoing in the soul. The air grew thick with a real, palpable despair, the raw agony of a kingdom dying. The failing magic lashed out at them like a cornered animal. Liam's torch was their only shield. Its living flame was the only thing pushing back the chaos. They finally reached the heart of the catacombs, a vast cavern where a heartstone pulsed with a sickening black light. It wasn't a beacon of preservation anymore. It was a vortex of decay, a tiny black hole eating the spectral energy of the kingdom. The ghosts weren't just fading, they were being devoured. Around the stone, twisted, half-formed spirits writhed, their forms distorted by its corrupt magic. "It's worse than I thought," Liam breathed, his face pale. "The magic has turned malignant. It's feeding on them." He explained that trying to repair it now would be like trying to patch a volcano. Any new magic would probably just cause it to shatter, taking everything with it. There was only one other choice: destroy it. "If we destroy it," Alara asked, her voice trembling, "what happens to them?" "They'll be released," Liam said softly. "The spell will break. They'll be free to pass on the way they should have 1,000 years ago." "And the kingdom?" she whispered. "It will be gone. The ruins will still be here, but the Shadow Kingdom will end. And she would be left behind, mortal and completely alone. For a millennium, her entire purpose had been to preserve her people. Now she understood that true leadership, true love, meant letting them go. Her reign was never a duty. It was a cage she had mistaken for a throne. "Do it," she said, her voice filled with a resolve she hadn't felt in centuries. The corrupted Heartstone fought back. As Liam began a counter-ritual from a text he'd memorized, the twisted spirits swarmed them. Alara, for the first time, used her power not as a warden, but as a queen. She stood in front of Liam, her spectral form blazing with 1,000 years of collected sorrow and love. She was the anchor, and she would not be moved. She held the screaming phantoms at bay, her will alone forming a shield, buying Liam the precious moments he needed. He slammed his palm, glowing with an inscribed rune, onto the Heartstone. The result wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion of silence. A wave of pure white light erupted from the stone, washing through the catacombs, up through the castle, and across the entire kingdom. As the light touched each ghost, their forms solidified for one perfect moment. The waltzing nobles paused, the guardsmen turned from their posts, and for the first time, they all looked towards their queen. They smiled, and 1,000 silent voices whispered a single word in her soul: "Thank you." Then they dissolved into motes of gentle light, ascending and fading into the twilight sky. The crown of echoes evaporated from Alara's head. The stones of the castle groaned as the magic holding them in stasis finally let go. The spectral barrier around the kingdom shattered, and for the first time, Alara felt the wind of the living world on her cheek. The sun, just beginning to rise over the distant mountains, cast a golden spear of light into the valley. It lit up the ancient, crumbling ruins of what was once Silengard. She stood among the stones of her fallen kingdom, no longer a phantom, no longer a queen. She felt the chill of the morning air and the solid ground beneath her. She was mortal. She was alone. But, standing right beside her, his torch now extinguished in the growing light of dawn, was Liam. Her past was gone. Her future was a blank page. But, for the first time in 1,000 years, it was hers to write.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the Shadow Kingdom. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing for more tales from the realms of fantasy and mystery. Let us know in the comments what you think Alara's future holds, and be sure to check out the description for links to support our channel and our authors. The story of the last heir is over, but the world is now wider and more mysterious than it was before. What other forgotten kingdoms lie sleeping, just waiting for a single living soul to stumble upon their secrets? What curses are really just long-forgotten acts of love? Perhaps some shadows aren't meant to be feared, but to be understood. We'll see you in the next story.